what are your thoughts on like today's like nuance of, different designers coming out and, for lack of better terminology, like bootlegging, is a resurgency now where like
Mm.
Nike's going back and attacking these and like either making them quiet or, settling or whatever the case may be. And late, it's like, the Warren Lourdeses of the world,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
John Geigers of the world, the
Yeah.
Kool Kies of the world. Like, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on like that, not nuance, but like that resurgency of like Nike giving a fuck about their IPs and like maybe they're lacking in like,
Mm.
in my opinion, they're lacking in innovation. So like let's, now attack at our latest, for, whatever their
Yeah.
gimmick is behind it, like their new, competitor per se that they can just knock off the board and automatically.
Well, and you say some really interesting things there, and I think we've all been saying them, and I think you probably talk to people on social media, and everybody's kind of saying the same thing, right? Um, and the first thing you hear people say, the Nike purists, the kids protecting investments, or the easiest thing to say is like, "Get your own idea, guy." And I mean, we could be here all day talking about how much Nike is stolen. And that doesn't really solve the argument. Everybody's already numb to that statement, right? Even though it's very, very true. The Air Force One was taken from a boot. It was completely taken from a boot. That is an absolute fact. And if you go, and if some of you are tenacious enough, go find the gent who designed the Air Force One and, lean on him. But he's talked about it. It's the truth. So, and we look at the Air Force One, we look at the Dunk. It's all the same shoe.
Mm-hmm.
The Vandal, it's all the same shoe. And if you go back, if you look at the era that came out in, if you go back and look at kangaroo boots and all of these, they were all sort of doing this thing, which the what we call the toe box, the Vamp and the mud guard here. That was a trend, and all businesses follow the trends to sell. Nike could be selling toilet seats. They don't give a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
They honestly don't give a fuck. And they prove it in so many different ways. They just have their lane and they're sticking to it for the most part. But they'll sell, if suddenly it was like the style to have a toilet seat hanging off of this, you think they're not going to make it and sell it? Damn fucking right they are. The bootleg, this is a conversation that it's deep. It's a deep conversation, question to ask, because we are in a very politically divided and charged environment. And a lot of the people who are very engaged in the business of reselling and creating are very conservative. And then there's a lot of people that are very liberal. And so we're very polarized. It's now part of sneaker culture. And doesn't necessarily get involved, but it's quick. Suddenly you see all these guys who love hip hop and love streetwear and fashion suddenly are like, there's no racism. Like really crazy statements. You are both men of color in your own way. You fucking know there's racism.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard it come out of people's mouths, and not once. So we're in a very interesting time of denial, white denial specifically. And that's not me pandering and catering. I'm a white man. I get it. I also know I've watched, because of the neighborhoods I've lived in, I've seen people held back. Physically, literally in some cases. And when we talk about this, I know this seems like this is a stretch, but let's look at a guy like Kai. He's stealing IP. He's finding a lane. Drug dealers didn't invent cocaine. They're producing it. And they're selling it. It's just a very, very weird argument. And then we have, we get to something that's really legitimate in its own way. That's a good, honest living. And here's this man, a black man, who has true independence. And he's had to steal IP to get there. Does this have any impact on Nike? Not one bit. Nothing. Nothing of any significance financially. Nothing they could even measure. What are they really protecting here? What are we talking about? I don't know what we're talking about. But I do know that a company that has made its money off of black people, at the very least Jordan, has some sort of social obligation to create opportunity. And does that mean you have to be the best of the best of a person of color or white in order to only be blessed? That was the only way. And here's a man who is coming up through the amateur ranks, through street ball, to try and get to the NBA. He may be seen as not having the sophistication, which is not true. But let's just say, he's doing his thing. He's making beautiful colorways.
Mm-hmm.
Some of his colorways, Nike could really, he's taken what Nigo's done and run. Not all of them are great. Not all of anything anybody does, but Kai has done some really interesting things. We can talk about the silhouette. We can talk about, all the things that aren't right. But he's in the AAA ball. He's down there balling. He's the one guy that you could put on your fucking team and put on with other people on your team and make something incredible. Signing a guy like Kai is like signing any dude that's dribbling a basketball who's just so good he didn't need college. Now, I'm not saying he's got this industrial design certificate. He's not Tinker Hatfield. Mm-hmm. He's not really a designer in that way. But in many ways, Virgil is that. Virgil has a certain level of sophistication, education. He has a degree in architecture. He understands. I mean, he's a cultural phenomenon. There's never really going to be somebody like him do what he's done, open doors the way he has. But here's an opportunity for Nike to go, you know what? AAA, we're going to sign him as like a college guy. Bring Kai in, give him some free reign, and go. But what is the ego here? If he went to them, or if they went to him and gave him an offer he couldn't refuse, I don't know that he'd take it, because I know he really enjoys being the character that he is. The enemy, they've made him a star. Yeah. And I respect it. Yeah. I love the guy for what he's doing. I don't care. His art, let's put that aside. What he represents, the same way D and Ricky. There's black men that are getting past a point for whatever reason, whatever you believe, whatever your politics are, and you believe that whether he had a fair shake or whatever, he's overcome a certain level of adversity and a lack of education to get somewhere that nobody's been. Certainly not a black man. Even Nigo's out there in Japan getting massaged. This dude, Nike could sign him and look at him as a amateur athlete that they're taking from the ground up. They put money and resources behind him and see what he can do. How is that any different than Travis Scott? How is it any different? Travis Scott is talking about, women in derogatory ways, talking about drugs, violence, talk about anything he wants. And he can also be esoteric and, different and playful. But Nike doesn't have a problem with that. Yeah. Doesn't have a problem when you're talking about something that's destructive potentially. I'm not saying I like Travis Scott personally. I like his music. I like everything he's doing. It's just I'm on board. I don't really care. Yeah. Whatever doesn't work, I don't care. I don't even look at that. I look at the stuff that does. But how is it any different? Yeah. But because your egos are involved, Nike. Because your egos are involved. What are we talking about here? You're trying to oppress this guy? Oh, and then everybody, he's stealing. Motherfucker. Anybody that's ever said that to me about anybody else or about me, I look at them from head to toe, and they don't got an original idea on their body. Not one original garment they produced, not any original idea. Every look they have looks like they went into an Applebee's and chose the fucking picture and said, that's me. Yeah. Can Kai be so much more? Should he be so much? Absolutely should.
Yeah, I agree.
And he should be given the platform to do it because he's shown that he's got a fucking audience. The only reason they signed Jordan is because he has an audience. The only reason they collaborate with Virgil or with Travis Scott. And there's a big difference between Travis Scott and Virgil because Virgil is in so many ways a traditional sort of garment guy, you know, in many ways, or learned, self-taught. He is, I mean, you wouldn't think of Virgil for designing your wedding dress or your, but you do now.
Yeah.
Off-White never would have said, could you design a wedding dress for me based on that t-shirt? But there's a certain level of sophistication in the way that Virgil talked, and because he has a little bit of a pedigree, right? And the way he came through traditional education. But Kai, man, get it. You're not going to give it to you. Get it.